Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Insights from Slack, Dropbox, and Asana on Remote Work webinar. My name is Sharif, and I'll be your moderator today. I also lead partnerships here at Asana, helping to develop relationships with leading technology companies to provide value for our customers through integrated workflows. As you all know, we're facing unprecedented times, and today I'll be in conversation with industry leaders at Dropbox, Slack, and Asana to discuss best practices for teams to stay connected and organized in this changing world, trends around customer behavior and the shift to remote work, and what might change or remain the same once we reach a new normal. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly go over some housekeeping items. First, this webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive the recording after the event has concluded. Second, all attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage you to ask questions in the Zoom Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Lastly, we'll have an audience Q&A session at the end of the webinar and in our online community forum. For our agenda today, I will first introduce the panelists. We'll then have a conversation about remote work, and then leave some time for audience Q&A at the end. Finally, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. We're really excited you're able to be here, and we hope you're able to leave the event with some great insights. With me today, I have Andy Flaum, Jamie Young-Perlman, and Maria Wu-Kiskis. To get us started, why don't we have the participants all turn on their webcams? Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. To get us started, why don't we do some quick introductions and an icebreaker? Why don't each of you say who you are and where you work? And for the icebreaker, please share one thing you're secretly pleased you don't have to do now that you're socially distancing. Andy, why don't you go first?
Thank you. I'm Andy Flaum. I'm a director in our platform team at Slack. That means all the ways we help customers get more value from all their existing software by connecting it to Slack. I've been at Slack about a year and a half, and before that I was co-founder of a 30-person company called Astra, which was applying machine learning to workplace communications. And in 2018, we joined Slack to help build integrations such as with Office 365, Google Calendar, and support partners like Asana and Dropbox as they built integrations that help our joint customers be more productive. And during the shutdown, what I've secretly not missed has been commuting. So while I've missed working in an office with teammates, there's definitely a benefit to not having a commute at the front end and the back end of the workday.
Great. Thanks, Andy. And thanks, Sharifa, and everyone for inviting us to be a part of this panel. Really delighted to be a part of the event. So I'm Jamie Young-Perlman. I'm VP of Business Development at Dropbox. For those who are not familiar, Dropbox is a smart workspace. We bring all of a team's content together with the tools that they love to use, like Slack and Asana. And I think we're very fortunate. We built a product to help people stay connected and collaborate wherever they are. And so obviously it's an incredibly relevant product during these unprecedented times. And again, we feel very fortunate in that regard. In terms of something I secretly do not miss, I have two things. One is I do not miss not having to wear shoes. I've been wearing flip-flops for the last 2 months, and I think it's going to be very difficult to go back to wearing shoes when we are back in the office. I also have a 5-month-old infant, and so I have not missed not having to say goodbye to her every day and being able to watch her grow, and see her all day on a daily basis.
Hi, I'm Maria Kiskis. I lead our business and corporate development team at Asana, and I have the pleasure of working with leading tech players like Slack and Dropbox and partners across the ecosystem to create customer value as we work to accelerate our overarching and reach our mission. For those that aren't familiar, Asana is a work management platform that can help teams collaborate and coordinate more effortlessly, connecting what we refer to as the pyramid of clarity, bringing strategy down to project management and tasks, and making sure that we can stay connected. You guys kind of stole my commute and family time, so I'll say that I'm probably secretly pleased that I can be hyper vigilant about how I'm spending my time, because every moment I'm managing in my mind is important, and giving myself permission to let go of things that aren't. So don't get me wrong, I'm not always successful, but try I might.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. I have to say, you guys all had great answers to the icebreaker. The not wearing shoes one especially resonates with me. Although I have to say, I've been mostly, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, in slippers instead of flip-flops, but I get that. Okay, so to kick us off, according to Asana's recent Anatomy of Work study, we found that nearly 2/3 of teams have increased their usage of collaboration tools as a result of working from home. And I'm sure this is no surprise to any of you. How have you all seen customer behavior change in the past few months? Jamie, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, we've seen the same thing at Dropbox that you're seeing at Asana. Again, it shouldn't surprise people. It's definitely showing up in our customer metrics. So business team trials for Dropbox have increased by 40% since March, but not only looking at kind of top of funnel metrics like trial starts, but in usage as well, we're seeing a difference. Weekly active users on our new desktop app has increased by 60% in the same period. So again, it's quite a surge. For me, getting away from the metrics, and again, I don't think those metrics would surprise anyone, right? Everyone is suddenly having to work remotely, and so they're taking advantage of tools like ours. I think what's been interesting for me is hearing from customers how these tools and how this environment is changing the way they think about work. And if it's okay, I wanted to share one example. There's a customer of ours. It's an architecture class from the University of Pennsylvania, and I know we have a blog post going out on this. I think it's tomorrow, but that's where I read this quote. But I thought it was so interesting in describing their transition to holding these architecture classes remotely. They said what started out as a very practical hands-on class has turned into a study about digital collaboration. Schools and also companies are going to have the experience that when you're forced to work remotely, you suddenly realize all the advantages of working remotely. It can be hard to get everyone together in person, even in normal times. But if all you have to do is open a Dropbox paper document, for example, those people can get to that work on their own timeline, anywhere they happen to be, and you actually end up building huge amounts of efficiency. And they said, I think we're all learning better ways because we're being forced to. So hearing anecdotes like that, I think are really interesting right now.
Yeah, thank you. We've seen, as far as some of the metrics, a lot of the same, similar with anecdotes. Andy, do you have anything to add as far as what you've seen at Slack?
Yes, absolutely. We've seen a huge increase in use of collaboration tools, from video conferencing, solutions like Zoom, of course, obviously file sharing and collaboration, task and team management of projects, and in our world, channel-based messaging, which connects in with all those kinds of tools. And in particular, we've seen that be a shift from such a heavy reliance on email that a lot of companies have traditionally had when they're kind of working in the traditional in-office model. But that really, I think people find that doesn't translate well when your company suddenly has to move hundreds or thousands of team members all remote overnight and for the indefinite future. I think about something that there's a business thinker here in the Bay Area, Jeffrey Pfeffer, has talked about the concept of knowing versus doing. I think a lot of organizations have known that there were better ways to work, but it's really hard to break the models that we've been working under until in some cases there's a real catalyzing event, which unfortunately I think the COVID-19 is serving as that catalyst that's probably accelerating this digital transformation that many companies are doing by 2 years, 5 years. It's really moved us forward. What we've seen at Slack is a change in terms of the volume and the pace of the number of new teams of all sizes that are using solutions like ours and connecting up to partner solutions like Asana and Dropbox. And then we've seen a growth in existing teams, customers like IBM that has hundreds of thousands of users who are using this kind of channel-based messaging are also growing in their depth of use. We've seen a threefold increase in the number of our customers using calls, video conferencing. We've seen a doubling of the amount of messaging that they're doing and the other kinds of metrics that we look at for use of a platform like ours. We've seen about a 40% increase in the amount of time people are spending sort of hands-on keyboard in these collaboration tools. But we've also seen, interestingly, already in the 2.5 months that we've been in this state, we've seen some fatigue coming from the constant sort of nonstop video conferencing. And one of the important things we've started to observe is that people really do value the persistent discussions, the ways that they can collaborate online that doesn't always require being in front of a camera. And that means sharing information that can be searchable, means the project plans and task plans that they might do in a solutions like Asana, the document sharing and collaboration that they do, and the workflow management they do in a tool like Dropbox, the kinds of group discussions that they do in Slack. These are things that go beyond the moment of the discussion you're having, but they actually are the persistent, ongoing plans and work of the organization. So we've seen a very strong connection to that type of work that gets us beyond just the in-the-moment, real-time live discussions that are important as well.
Great. And with all of this, this increase in usage, with either new teams joining Slack or existing teams expanding, what has your team done? What has your company done to support all of these customers that you're most proud of?
Well, first thing is, I think like a number of companies, we've tried to contribute where our solution and our company feels like we can provide the most value. And that's not just necessarily giving away the product to any and all comers for some period of time. It's probably being specific in the way that we're trying to deliver that support. So one thing we've done is we're providing free for a while our solution to medical projects, academic projects, and other nonprofits who are helping with research and other ways of addressing COVID-19. So that ranges from, for example, a project that was spawned at University of California, San Francisco, where they've connected up over 20 different labs from different institutions and agencies around the world to do some specific research on COVID-19. And another example is a community of creators called Masks for Docs that was rallying new designs and delivery of masks for medical providers. And then a third is Remote Academia, which is a community of thousands of higher ed academics who are sharing their experiences on moving education, learning, and research online overnight. Another thing that our company has done is we provided about 1,000 free consultations for customers who are figuring out how to make the transition to remote work. And these are 20 to 30 minute video consultations that we've provided to any user, free or paid. And also as part of that, our developer relations team has been providing specialized consultations to developers who are building custom apps to support their company's transitions to remote work. So I think those are some of the things that we've been able to really lend our expertise and our knowledge about how teams can do digital transformation, even as they're forced to almost overnight, and how we can lend support to that.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And moving to Asana, Maria, I know that we field a lot of questions on best practices. Can you share with our audience what best practices you recommend for teams that are trying to stay connected and organized, or for individuals that are trying to maintain focus when at home?
Yeah, so our content team has published a number of useful tips on the Asana blog, such as coverage of top integrations with Asana, including Slack and Dropbox. So I'll try to cover things that you can't already find online. And there's, two things I think about. One is how we use the technology at our fingertips. And the beauty of it is that we can have conversations both synchronously over messaging, over video, over phone, and asynchronously to document, track, manage, and report out who does what by when and how progress is coming along. So I think a core benefit of leveraging the technologies at hand is enabling this continuous feedback loop. Like, what are the interdependencies from how a high-level planning meeting trickles down to the minute details and then back up again? And the loop is to inform how are we doing across all teams. So we can use that technology to break down the silos and ideally shorten that feedback loop. And in many ways, that's what these technologies were built for. So I think that's a core thing that to how do you manage the proliferation of tools rather than get overwhelmed by them. The other is how we use our one-on-one time wisely to focus on where we need that live iterative collaboration. I hear a lot that people are like, there's too many meetings. Are we using those meetings for check-ins that we can do asynchronously? And so can we use that one-on-one time to diagnose issues, provide feedback, refine processes or decisions that actually need to be made? And I would say tied to the one-on-ones is that it's important in this remote world to check in during those one-on-ones, giving ourselves permission to acknowledge where are we, whether I'm worried, I'm sad, I'm excited, I'm having a pretty crappy day, or whatever reason. It's a constant reminder that we're actually connected at a human level and that each team member matters. As for maintaining focus at home, right now means balancing across work, family, alone time, and connecting with others I care about. And the lines are definitely blurred because we don't have the space, as Andy mentioned, of traveling from one place to another to separate these aspects of our lives. And so something I've been working on actively is being mindful and present in that moment. And so throughout the day, I check in and assess whether what I'm doing at the moment is the most important thing for that moment. And this includes what's on my mind when I'm spending it with my family, if I'm practicing self-care, or for the priorities at work. And I think it's giving ourselves permission that if I'm doing one thing and thinking about the other, to pause and put a bookmark in it and let it go for that moment, or maybe let it go of it completely. For work, I actually have a project dedicated to things to come back to and another for random tasks to track. My husband and I actually use a personal Asana project so that we don't have to use the limited, non-working, non-homeschooling, non-parenting time to talk through more logistics. And I would say finally, I found headphones to be a godsend because even with the distractions that is life, like I can move on. The Asana team actually published a set of work from home playlists to satisfy any multitude of flavors for music. My favorite might be the nostalgic 90s and aughts, but I'm not sure if I can be honest about it, if that's my favorite because of focus. So
I don't know if I've seen the nostalgic 90s playlist specifically, but I will have to go check that out.
yes.
Andy, Jamie, anything to add on best practices for staying connected or for maintaining focus when at home?
Can I get access to these playlists too, or are these Asana only?
Oh no, these are publicly available. I can send a link.
Okay. I am always looking for new music. I am doing a lot of listening, just as you are. I think the only best practice I would mention is, I think transparency is doubly important in these times when we're not able to walk the halls and kind of have that water cooler chat and kind of check in with our coworkers. And all the tools we're talking about and a number of others really allow for that ability to see everything that is going on across the organization if you let it, right, and if you use them to that end. So I love the idea of Asana making kind of company goals available, to everyone, kind of top to bottom, and that kind of clarity and transparency. I'm a huge believer in that. Yeah, we could go on and on with examples, but I think it is doubly important to make sure that you're not that you recognize that, hey, if the company is going to be dispersed, we might have to do things that we didn't do previously to make sure that all of this information, we might have to record some things that normally you might not bother to record, but it'll make it available to everyone and make it quite efficient actually for them to understand what's going on.
I would just quickly add to that. I appreciate what you just said there, Jamie, and echoing Maria about the goals. We as a company, a little over a year ago, started moving toward a more formalized OKR process of publishing company level goals and departmental level goals, objectives, and then the key metrics that we follow. And so it was fortunate for us that we had that established already and that we communicated those broadly internally and tracked to them internally, but even more so important now because we're really not all together to do that in-person kind of coordination and alignment, and having those objectives for everybody to be aware of and aligned to has been really important. Now, of course, we've shifted a number of those here in the current quarter because the business world has changed and our business has changed, but at least we had that framework in place and we had that muscle of communicating what our company objectives are and what each of our team's objectives are. And I think it's important for organizations of any size. I know my wife runs a family business of about 40 people, and they have also adopted that kind of model, even down at that small size of company, because it's so important that everybody can understand what the common goals are and how they're aligned to those.
Thank you, everyone. Jamie, Dropbox has put out some thought leadership around how it can support distributed work with features like syncing to the cloud. Can you tell us a bit more about how your company is helping customers adapt to remote work?
Sure. The kind of top level thing I'll call out, I just want to flag all the great work both our infrastructure and customer support teams did in preparing for this crisis properly. Just really thankful that they kind of foresaw what might be happening as the first rumblings of remote work started coming, and they geared up for it, because obviously if you're going to depend on a tool like Dropbox, it can't go down, right? Or if you need support, you're gonna have to be able to get that support. And so I would say that's been job number one for us in terms of supporting our customers, is making sure just that the lights stay on, and that even through this surge in demand, they get the same experience they'd expect. That said, we've been doing a lot of work, especially those support teams, just to educate people how they can get more out of the product. So it's not just file sharing, but it really is a smart workspace that can keep entire projects organized for your teams. And so they've been sharing a lot of best practices. I read another interesting story about the Red Cross in Italy that has started using Dropbox, and same thing, right? They're using a space. It helps them distribute information efficiently across different geographies. So just kind of sharing those best practices has been one of the best ways we've helped. And then we have another product. We acquired a company called HelloSign last year, which is an e-signature product. And so we've been helping lenders who weren't necessarily up on digital signatures, which obviously that's critical right now, helping lenders get up to speed on HelloSign. And obviously that helps with them being able to quickly distribute funds to small businesses with those loans. So those are a few of the things we've been doing.
Thank you, Jamie. Maria, Andy, anything to add on what your companies are doing?
Well, I'll mention at Slack, I talked about this a little bit before. We've offered these, it's about 1,000 different consultations we've done already for our customers, specifically on how they can adapt to remote work. And that's not only in using our product, Slack, but all the other associated products that we use, like Dropbox. We use Dropbox Paper for documenting a lot of the projects that we're doing. We use Asana and other tools to track and keep this persistent searchable record of all the work that we're doing. And we're working with our customers to help them understand how they can make similar type of transition as we've done at Slack. And then we've also published a lot of resources on our site, some of which are sort of general to any type of organization, some of which are specific to certain verticals, like financial services or higher education. So we're really trying to share the knowledge that we've built up in general, and in using tools like ours, like the way we use Dropbox and the way we use Asana and other tools.
Right. Thank you. So is someone that works on the same team as Maria, she's done a tremendous job supporting everyone as we make this pivot. Maria, can you tell us a bit more about how you're helping your own team better adapt to remote work?
Thank you for your kind and generous words, Sharifa. I think one of Asana's core values is being real, which invites us to bring our whole selves. And that means our strengths and our limitations to the table and grow in our journey together. Another one is having heartitude, which means taking the time to play and have fun. And so from the beginning, I think we made an active effort to encourage team members to be transparent about what they need, and in turn to ensure there was support, particularly for team members who needed flexibility, be they because they were parents, caretakers, or just need the space to adapt. And the benefit is that when the team is on, we're present and focused. And the beauty of having Asana as a tool that we use is that we can use that to track, manage, and share out what's going on across the team, and so that we can enable that to work more effortlessly together, if you will, and also enable it to connect across the various tools. I would say for me personally, I've been having a lot more virtual coffees with team members across the organization, and a lot of that is over Zoom, in addition to sort of standing one-on-ones. And I find it a way to check in and also to learn about teammates who I would otherwise be chatting with over lunch, or as Jamie noted, at the water cooler. And I genuinely enjoy it. And for me, I'm a relatively new member of the Asana team, so I'm learning about the organization. I'm learning from my teammates every day, and that creates opportunities to then, I think the beauty of the tool where you can access things that are asynchronously is I can go follow up without having to use that time while we're in person. And more than anything, I love that we're connected across this dynamic global team. I think the ability to be able to leverage the tools that we have at hand to stay connected, to understand what's going on without having to necessarily literally reach out and touch someone, it's worth it. And I'm grateful to be a part of a company that lifts each other up and helps one another grow.
I totally agree. Andy, Jamie, anything to add on things you're doing with your own teams?
I'll add, well, first of all, everything that Maria mentioned resonated, and we're doing a number of those things ourselves. But I think the thing to me that kind of is at the top of my mind is the touchy-feely, even silly things that feel like they're, like, I shouldn't do that, this is a work environment, have made such a difference. As just one example, our COO, who's my manager, has all of her directs in her leadership team meetings. There's a different theme for our Zoom background every week, right? And part of you is like, oh, I gotta dig up some Zoom picture for this, for our meeting, like a favorite restaurant or a place you want to visit as soon as all of this is over. But then when you get in there and start sharing stories about, about that place you want to visit or that restaurant, suddenly, it provides that connective tissue that is much harder to come by. outside of the office. And so I do think it's important to be very intentional about those things. And again, I kind of add those, touchy-feely moments, if you will, to the day.
I would echo that. We do some similar things at Slack because we don't have the water cooler moments or the lunchroom time, or even just sort of passing somebody to their desk and asking how their weekend was. And so we've created really interesting, for us, substitutes for those in ways that we really like. For example, we have something we call workflow that kicks off a reminder once a day to our team, share something, be it a photo or some anecdote from your day if you like, it's optional. But we'll get things like, in the past few days, one of the team members shared a photo of the new dog that she had just adopted. Another one showed like some of the bread that she'd made over the weekend. Another one showed, a mishap from her bicycle over the weekend. But it keeps us connected in a way that we don't have the opportunity for anymore in a physical office, while we're continuing to do all the work as well of our roles. That's a connective tissue that we really appreciate.
Great, thank you, everyone. Thank you for all of your answers. It's time to now move to audience questions. And I think Rachel has made the request for you to submit anything through the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. To get us started, a question that I see a lot here. So something on the mind of many in our audience today. When teams and companies return to the office, what do you think will change? Maybe Andy, we can start with you.
Sure. Well, first off, I think we don't really know when those of us in sort of traditional office or information worker roles will return. Obviously, a lot of the economy is trying to figure out how to get back to, running restaurants and retail and other types of roles. But in the type of roles that in companies many of us are in, I just don't think we know right now how soon we're going to be going back. But I do think a few things we've seen is that there will be some type of a new normal, different than what we had a few months ago. And we have an opportunity to determine how we could emerge better and work better as teams and as companies, using the kind of tools and techniques we've been talking about here in doing that. I do think that we are being very conscious. Maria made mention of this for Asana, of having fewer meetings. We can really bog ourselves down with too many meetings, too many people invited to all those meetings. And there's a lot of that work we could get done in other methods, including documenting and creating a persistent record of the work that we're doing and it needs to get done. And so using tools like Asana, Dropbox, like Slack, we can create that those plans and be able to have everybody stay on track with that and aligned to that, even the people who never would have come to that meeting in the first place, and substitute for those person-to-person meetings. One other thing that we do at Slack is that we have, most companies, of course, are having virtually no face-to-face or in-person, I should say, interaction with their customers, their vendors, their suppliers. We have a capability called shared channels where anybody using Slack can connect directly to work with any other customer or vendor or partner who uses Slack. And through these shared channels, they can be communicating, they can be doing Zoom calls, they can be sharing files from Dropbox. And so they can really do a lot of the substitution of what might have once been a face-to-face meeting through these shared channels. So when we do go back to the office, it's going to be a very different type of environment. We're going to go back in a different way, and we don't know when that's going to be, but we really do think there's this opportunity to emerge working better using the kinds of tools that we've been talking about here.
Maria and Jamie, anything to add on the sort of future way of working?
I mean, I would echo a lot of what Andy said in terms of, the world has changed dramatically in these last 3 months, and whether we want to or not, teams have been forced to adapt to the changing dynamics as we, have sheltered in place. And I think that another outcome, in addition to what he shared, was that there'll be greater flexibility for teams to be distributed and potentially across the globe. And what that means is it opens up opportunity to access talent where geography may have been previously prohibitive. You see that with the announcement that Twitter made a couple days, enabling their work team to work from home indefinitely. we may see more of that, or we may not, but I acknowledge that there's aspects of working from home that has led to operational efficiencies. Similar to what we talked about in the beginning, we don't have to commute. We can spend the time between meetings catching up or reflecting rather than racing from the second to the ninth floor with 0 seconds to spare. And it often does feel like Groundhog Day, but so I think companies will get more creative in how they engage their teams and drive that connectivity, be it virtually or when we're back in real life. I think it's not easy by any means, but we are resilient beings, and it's easy to focus how much further we have to go. So great to take that moment to pause and remember how far we've come.
Right. Okay, I see another question from the audience, and Andy, this actually connects to what you said, I think, earlier when we got started as far as tool fatigue. The question is, I found many of my team members reverting back to bad habits, like sending internal communications via email. What advice do you have to keep the momentum going in moving our teams to new platforms while navigating so much change in our work environment?
Well, one that I would mention is, I think any of us who are on here are probably leaders in our business to some extent at some level. What we see is that whenever leaders exemplify the type of activity they would like to see in their organization, people tend to follow that. Certainly, there's so much about what our CEO, Stuart, and our leadership do that we admire and emulate, including open communication. It's the number of all hands meetings that we've had for a while, but we have probably even more of them now. It's the open communication. Generally, our default is, if something can be shared within the company, broadly within the company, do that. It doesn't mean you have to mention everybody. You have, like in the email equivalent, adding the entire distribution list or adding everybody to the 2-line. You don't have to do that in some of the tools like we're talking about here, like Slack and Dropbox and Asana. The fact that you're making it available to anybody if they want to search and find it creates a greater openness. And by showing that, by modeling that as leaders in our organization, defaulting to more open communication rather than more closed or private communication sends a very powerful signal. Another thing we've seen that's really interesting is, with this shift to remote work, we saw a great rise in the amount of video calling versus previously the majority had been voice calling, even online voice calls. As we said before, there can be a little bit of fatigue with that. You can't do 100% of your day doing video conferences with other people, but we think that's been an encouraging trend, seeing people be open to that kind of communication, as opposed to trying to do it all in, one-to-one email or just kind of private voice calls, for example. So I would say that leadership that any of us can show in our organizations, especially if we are in leadership roles ourselves, is probably the greatest thing that we can do to help transform our organizations.
Right. So another very popular question, a lot of attendees use all 3 platforms, Slack, Dropbox, and Asana. What are some tips that you have for them to work together best?
I can jump in there. I think with Asana, one of the benefits I found is sort of what I referred to as that ability to work both synchronously and asynchronously in projects and tasks, to document, track, manage, and report who does what, by when, and how progress is coming along. We have multiple parties, so often asynchronous comms are feeding through, be it because of time zones or cross-functional teams, or whatever someone's schedule is. So depending on team preferences, they can manage in a list, Kanban or timeline view, and then multiple projects can roll up. What we've done a lot is, we'll say then for real-time communication, we ourselves use Slack for direct messaging to get that immediate response. And the beauty of our integrations means that we can connect Asana projects into Slack to easily track conversations and keep ideas actionable by turning messages into tasks. It kind of goes really well. And for managing file share and content, we use Dropbox. And if there are other platforms that teams use, they can be added to Asana tasks projects, but we make it so that it's easy to use wherever you are spending that time. And I think that's one of the real beauties of technology.
Right. Andy or Jamie?
Yeah, I would echo that. At Slack, for example, we use, as I said before, we use Dropbox, including Dropbox Paper, for a lot of our creating of documents and project plans and iterating on those. And that has an integration directly in Slack. So every time there's an update to one of those documents, or somebody wants to share a Dropbox Paper document with me, I get notified about that directly in Slack. So I don't have to be jumping around to an email notification or out to another application to be notified about this. And as Maria just mentioned, one of the very common things we'll do in Slack to manage our project lists and our tasks is take a message that we've received, and with a couple clicks from inside Slack, we add it directly into Asana, into our task list, or we add it to an existing task in Asana. So that type of integration is really powerful for helping people to be able to work with these best of breed tools. These tools are each the best in doing what they do, but not having to spend all day hopping around all the various tools we have at our hands.
Great. Okay, so we have just 2 minutes left. To close the event, let's end with this last question for each of the panelists. What is your favorite application to use while working remotely outside of productivity? Maria?
So I would say it's not the one that I necessarily spend the most time on, but I would say my favorite app has been Mindbody Online. Because I spend so much of the day here at my standing desk, it's easy for me to make an excuse to do something, to not do something. And it's those times that I force myself to sign up for like an online conditioning, yoga, or dance class. It really helps to break up my day and move from my work day to my personal responsibilities, and particularly if I've had a stressful day, I can pop into something that really helps me to unwind. And sometimes my kids join me. I would say the benefit in this new normal is that all I have to do is go 5 feet here and set out a mat and get to work, right? So there isn't that inhibitor of actually getting someplace. And I've actually been making more online classes because we have access now to instructors not only in San Francisco, but also in New York and London and Singapore. And that's really fun. And I think finally the last piece, and I'll leave it there, is that even if I've never taken the format before, I can still rock out like no one's watching, because the reality is no one is.
And Andy?
Well, I guess I'd say two. One is Pandora, just having a variety of music to listen to, and the liberty of doing it, at least in the portion of the day that there aren't meetings going on online. But now I want to add to that, following the nostalgic 90s list that Maria shared from Asana. And the second is Strava, the exercise kind of tracking application, because we have a group, a team or a channel at Slack of people, runners and bikers, who are sort of sharing and chatting about the different routes we're doing and the places that we like to exercise and how we're dealing with it in this time. So between Strava and Pandora, those are probably the two apps that overlap with work, but aren't directly productivity related.
Jamie?
So funny. Of course, mine were Apple Music and the Peloton app. We were lucky. We got a Peloton bike because of the baby, not because of COVID, but thinking that we could get a workout in at home with the new baby. But of course, it's been very useful. I will share that I even bought a tray that lets you put your laptop on the Peloton, and so you can get a little work done and get a mellow ride going at the same time.
That is true efficiency.
Yeah,
I've actually seen that tray. That tray has made its rounds on our Asana Peloton Slack channel.
That's funny.
So I get that. Okay. Let's see here. That about does it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for organizing this important discussion.